Few people mention this side of the story. You won't find it on YouTube, in retirement forums, or even in expat Facebook groups, where there's an unspoken rule to avoid the topic. Most content about retiring in the Philippines follows the same script, the idealized version. The one with the affordable apartment, endless sunshine, welcoming locals, and savings that go further than they ever did before. The version where the man in the thumbnail beams on a beach between Cebu and Palawan, looking a decade and a half younger than he did in his old job. That version is real. I'm not saying it isn't. But there's another side, one where men arrive with the same dreams, the same hope, the same nest egg, and the same smile, only to end up in places they can barely afford, their health fading from decisions made when life still felt like a victory. Stranded between a life they can't maintain here and a return they can't stomach back home. The situation reveals a troubling mortality rate among Western male retirees in the Philippines that remains absent from official statistics, largely because those creating retirement-focused content lack any motivation to highlight it. What the veteran expat community, with the grim humor that often emerges when confronting harsh realities, refers to as going native, isn't about cultural assimilation. Instead, it describes a man who arrives with stability, only to gradually lose everything, unnoticed by those back home until it's irreversible. This isn't about judgment or dictating choices, but about addressing the stark contrast between the marketed fantasy and the often unspoken truth. No one is producing content on this side of the story. The initial experience these men describe isn't exaggerated or imagined. The relief they feel is real. The sense of liberation is real. The sense of being seen, of being desired, of maturing in ways that no longer felt real back where they came from, it's all deeply real. It's important to be clear about this, because writing it off as foolishness or ignorance only makes it harder to grasp why capable, rational men end up where they do. Most of those who settle in the Philippines for good, the ones who stay for years instead of just a season, didn't set out with a detailed roadmap. That's the part the retirement narratives never mention. The men who end up there aren't usually following some well-researched, long-term strategy. They're reacting to a particular kind of hurt. It begins with a divorce, a layoff at 58 framed as restructuring, or the creeping awareness around 60 that the life they built in places like Manchester, Milwaukee, or Melbourne has rendered them socially invisible, a problem their society has no vocabulary or framework to fix. Studies on loneliness among men over 60 in Western nations consistently reveal statistics that should spark serious policy action, yet rarely do. In the UK, for instance, surveys show a striking number of older men go days, even weeks, without any meaningful human connection. Across the US, the situation mirrors this trend. The mix of retirement stripping away professional social networks, divorce dismantling home-based connections, and a broader Western cultural gap in fostering male friendships outside work or sports creates a largely unnoticed struggle. Many men endure this in silence, conditioned to view vulnerability as failure. Yet when they arrive in the Philippines, the shift is striking. Recognition comes instantly. The kindness is spontaneous. For someone who has spent years feeling unseen in his homeland, the authentic, effortless warmth of Filipino culture, genuine, unforced, and deeply engaging, can feel like a revelation. The financial shift only amplifies the change. A retiree with limited savings, who once struggled in places like the UK or Australia, discovers that in cities such as Cebu, Dumaguete, or Angeles, his income stretches further than it has in years. Suddenly, dining out daily becomes a reality. He has the means to enjoy drinks with friends night after night. He can finally be open-handed, picking up tabs, agreeing to things he's turned down for years. For a while, it feels like a real victory. Not just an act. Not some curated illusion. The guy in those beach photos, grinning at the camera, isn't faking it for the likes. He's genuinely happy. More alive than he's ever been. And that's precisely when the trouble starts, because the setup he stepped into is expert at making success feel like success, right up until the numbers stop adding up. The real discussion about money is where the truth hides, where all the polished lifestyle posts refuse to look. Living expenses in the Philippines are significantly more affordable compared to many Western nations. This affordability is a key factor drawing retirees to the country. However, while the overall cost of living appears low, a distinct financial trend often emerges, one that repeats frequently enough to be noticeable. Here's how it typically unfolds. A retiree arrives, let's say a 63-year-old British man, recently divorced, who liquidated his portion of the marital home. His savings amount to around £80,000. At current exchange rates, that translates to roughly 5.5 million Philippine pesos. By local standards, this sum represents substantial wealth, placing him in a strong financial position. On the surface, it seems he could settle here for years without issue. But the numbers don't capture everything. The real story lies in the interpersonal bonds and the weight of family duty. In the Philippines, connections between foreign men and local women nearly always involve some level of financial or emotional support for the woman's family. This isn't limited to relationships built on exchange, it's woven into the fabric of Filipino society. Family responsibility is profound and sincere. A Filipina in a relationship with a foreigner will typically help her parents, siblings, or even children from a past partnership, and often extend that support to other relatives. At first, the foreign partner may see this as kindness, as being part of something bigger. He assists individuals facing genuine hardships, providing modest but meaningful sums. A parent requires medicine costing 3,000 pesos, under $60. A niece or nephew needs school tuition, around 5,000 pesos. A relative seeks help repairing a storm-damaged roof, totaling 20,000 pesos. While each amount seems insignificant by Western measures, the combined impact over time is substantial. Studies on financial exchanges between foreign men and Filipino women reveal that sustained support often reaches hundreds or even thousands of dollars monthly when factoring in all forms of assistance, direct payments, gifts, covered bills, family event funding, and medical contributions. A man arriving with £80,000 and a steady income might not immediately notice the gradual outflow. Early on, the expenses feel manageable, and his finances appear stable. But by the third year, his savings have quietly dwindled in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. The alcohol economy. The Philippines boasts some of the most inexpensive alcohol in Southeast Asia. San Miguel, the country's leading beer, is sold at sari-sari stores, the tiny neighborhood shops found on almost every corner. For Westerners, the prices are incredibly low. A bottle of strong Red Horse beer, over 6% alcohol, costs just 30 pesos, a large San Miguel is 50 pesos, and a whole bottle of rum is cheaper than a single pint at a British pub. This affordability significantly alters drinking habits. In countries like the UK or Australia, high prices act as a natural check on consumption. While this doesn't apply to those with addictions, the average person is deterred from daily pub visits by the sheer cost. Financial friction helps regulate behavior, remove that barrier, and the restraint vanishes. Consequently, a moderate drinker who previously stuck to a few weekend beers or a glass of wine with dinner finds that, in the Philippines, there is no longer any financial reason to limit their intake. In many grocery stores, beer is priced lower than bottled water. The expat scene, especially in regions popular with retired foreigners, revolves heavily around bars and pubs. Alcoholism doesn't develop suddenly, it's a gradual process. At first, he drinks a little extra simply because it's easy. A few months later, he drinks more to fit in socially. By the half-year mark, the habit has settled in, and his friends are regulars at the same spot every night. Skipping it now feels like it needs justification. He doesn't always have the energy to explain. After 2 years, his body is under strain it wasn't built to handle. By the 4th year, a doctor reviews his test results and delivers news he'd rather avoid. By their 6th year, some of these men have vanished. Take Gerald Whitmore, his story isn't extraordinary, just commonplace, repeating with minor differences in Dumaguete, Cebu, Angela City, Subic Bay, and the quiet retirement hubs of Negros Oriental. It unfolds quietly, without headlines, videos, or social media posts, because those around Gerald stay silent, and Gerald himself can't speak up. I'll get to his story shortly. But first, I need to break down the exact process that made his fate nearly unavoidable from the moment he arrived, because recognizing this process is the only way to stop it. There's a distinct psychological pattern that long-term foreign retirees in the Philippines often describe, and it's the most overlooked yet critical aspect of this issue. Let's examine it step by step. First comes the euphoria. I've mentioned this before, it's real, powerful, and typically lasts anywhere. This could be happening to someone you know. Drop a comment if you've heard similar stories, I'll do my best to help. From a few months to a year and a half. The man feels free, desired, financially secure in ways he hasn't been in years. He believes he's cracked a problem most of his peers haven't even noticed. He's truly happy, grasp this, because it shapes everything that comes next. He's genuinely content at this point. Then comes stage 2, normalization. The euphoria doesn't vanish abruptly. The shift happens gradually. What once felt remarkable in the early days now seems ordinary a year later. The financial help that started as a voluntary gesture begins to feel like a duty over time. The drinking, initially a way to mark special moments, turns into a habit. At this point, he's still managing, financially stable, reasonably healthy, and in touch with family back home, though less often than before. Beneath the surface, though, his lifestyle expenses have quietly risen beyond what his income can sustain. He's dipping into savings he hadn't planned to use yet. He reassures himself he'll fix it, reduce the support payments, drink less. But for now, the pattern holds. He'll try to cut back on his monthly expenses. He won't succeed, not because he lacks willpower, though the drinking has quietly eroded his ability to think clearly and make sound choices, but because his entire social and personal world in the Philippines revolves around that spending. Scaling back would mean tearing apart the life he's built. This is the third phase, the point where progress stalls. It's what the expat crowd's cynical joke about going native really describes. By now, he's been away long enough that returning isn't just difficult, it's a tangled, layered challenge. His ties back home have faded. 3 or 4 years have passed, and the friends he once had, mostly co-workers, have settled into their own retired rhythms, leaving him behind. With his children busy leading their own lives, returning home bankrupt and broken after years of portraying his life abroad as a paradise is more than just a financial struggle. It carries a profound social stigma that men of his generation and background find utterly unbearable. Therapists and social workers assisting Western expatriates in the Philippines use a specific clinical term for this phenomenon, ambivalence of return. The man is fully aware that his circumstances are worsening. He sees it in his dwindling bank account and feels it in his failing health. Yet, the prospect of going back is so deeply tied to an overwhelming sense of personal failure that his decaying present feels far more tolerable than the shame of returning. And so, he chooses to stay. The clock never stops. Stage 4 arrives, the breaking point. A sudden shift forces a confrontation, a major health scare, a bank balance that plunges below survival level, a relative back home who finally learns the truth and reacts, or a relationship collapse that dismantles the framework holding his world together. Choices that existed 2 or 3 years earlier have vanished. Conditions that might have been managed with early care now demand costly solutions. Funds once set aside for a way back are depleted. Ties with family and friends, which could have offered support, have weakened beyond simple repair. This is where lives Unravel. Some weren't, but a few were. In their rented flats, by themselves, surrounded by faded beer ads from Thailand. Though now I'm thinking of the Philippines, San Miguel bottles gathering dust on the kitchen counter, a phone that hadn't carried a call from back home in ages. Gerald Whitmore stepped off the plane in Dumaguete at 64. For 32 years, he'd worked as an insurance claims adjuster in Coventry. He'd been married 21 of them. The split came without drama when he turned 58, just the slow unraveling of two people who no longer felt enough for each other. His daughters, one in Leeds, the other in Canada, cared about him, checked in when their own schedules permitted. He landed with around £93,000, his cut from selling the house, his pension payout, savings built over 20 years. For someone aiming to live simply in a place where costs were low, it seemed like plenty. Shirley Tanaka, a British-Japanese expatriate who has called Dumaguete home for over a decade, is the reason I learned of Gerald, not through personal acquaintance, but through an extended discussion with her. Without formal backing or official ties, she has spent the last 6 years operating an ad hoc safety net for foreign retirees in the area facing unexpected hardships. Over that time, she's encountered countless individuals like Gerald. According to Shirley and those who knew him early on, his initial months in Dumaguete were nothing short of idyllic. He was outgoing, warm, and quick with humor. He settled into a pleasant apartment near the waterfront, formed a relationship with Nellen, a 34-year-old woman raising 2 children from a past relationship, and became a familiar, well-regarded presence at social gatherings. Meals were shared, drinks flowed, and he was always part of the scene. The financial help he provided Nellen's family started organically: a medical bill, tuition costs, minor but urgent needs. Every sum was genuine, and so was the urgency behind it. Gerald contributed freely, taking satisfaction in his generosity. In the initial 12 months, Shirley calculated the family assistance reached approximately 350,000 pesos, about $6,000 at the time. Each request was modest on its own, but together they marked the start of a pattern. By the second year, Gerald's drinking had increased, though not sharply. There was no clear moment when he stepped over a threshold. Instead, his intake rose gradually, as it often does when evenings are spent with the same group and the group's standard for how much to drink in a night is higher than what he was used to. He remained capable, still the same person at his core. By the third year, Shirley began to see changes. He appeared noticeably older than in pictures from his first year abroad. His laughter did not come as easily anymore. He had briefly brought up a medical appointment, then never spoke of it again. On the rare occasions when financial matters were discussed candidly in his social circle, it became clear his savings were depleting much faster than he had anticipated. He was not yet in a desperate situation, but his safety net was shrinking. In his 4th year, his oldest daughter finally came to visit. She had been unable to make the trip sooner, held back by work, family duties, and the expensive airfare from Leeds. She stayed for 2 weeks. What she observed alarmed her so deeply that she had a blunt discussion with her father, one she would later describe to Shirley as the most difficult conversation of her life. She pleaded with him to return home. He explained he simply wasn't able. It wasn't a matter of choice, he physically couldn't. To the world, he'd painted a picture of fulfillment, the social media posts, the holiday cards praising Dumaguete as idyllic. Returning now, broke, unwell, a shadow of the life he'd claimed to lead, wasn't something he could face. Not publicly. She returned to Leeds and called more often. For 8 months, he picked up. Then the calls went unanswered, first occasionally, then almost never. Eventually, his voicemail stopped accepting messages. 14 months after her visit, Gerald passed away alone in his Dumaguete apartment. The official record cited liver failure. He was 69. When the final paperwork cleared, his bank account held roughly 47,000 pesos, around $800. His children took care of the return process, and the expenses exceeded what remained. I'd like to focus on healthcare, as it's the aspect of this topic most often distorted in retirement discussions about the Philippines. The common claim is that healthcare there is inexpensive, and in a limited, surface-level way, that's correct. Visits to private clinics are reasonably priced, and standard medical procedures cost far less than in the US or UK. Dental care, basic tests, and general checkups are genuinely affordable, requiring no substantial savings. But this narrative becomes deeply deceptive when applied to the medical realities of a 65-year-old with years of heavy drinking, early liver damage, and the long-term strain of a high-stress, alcohol-heavy lifestyle. Accessing quality healthcare in the Philippines can be both costly and logistically challenging. For those managing advanced chronic liver disease, specialized hepatology services are largely limited to Manila, with only a few options in Cebu City. Individuals in remote areas like Dumaguete, Siargao, or rural parts of Negros Oriental or Leyte face significant barriers, travel expenses, lodging, and the financial burden of specialist consultations, treatments, and potential hospital stays. Health insurance adds another layer of complexity. Securing international coverage for a 65-year-old with pre-existing conditions, especially those linked to alcohol use, often comes with steep premiums that may be unaffordable. Many expatriates arrive with savings, believing they'll have enough to cover medical needs, only to discover later that years of unmonitored spending have depleted their reserves just when care becomes essential. The British Embassy in Manila has handled numerous cases involving British citizens who need medical repatriation but lack the funds. While embassy staff assist in coordinating support, they are not authorized to directly finance such expenses. The UK authorities make it explicit that their consular support does not include funding medical treatment or repatriation. If you found this eye-opening, smash that like button so more people see it before it's too late. Expenses. Their role is limited to facilitating communication and arranging logistics. When funds run out, many find themselves with no viable options. The US Embassy operates under similar constraints in comparable cases. Meanwhile, Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade highlights this very issue in its travel advisories for the Philippines, warnings that are frequently overshadowed by the more popular lifestyle content appearing in the same search results. The scenario that emerges is stark and unsettling. A man facing serious illness, unable to pay for necessary medical care in the Philippines, lacking the means for a flight home, and possibly too unwell to travel without professional assistance, an added expense he also cannot afford, finds himself cut off from his home country's public healthcare system, which he hasn't been eligible for in years. In the language of social services, he is effectively stranded. Within the expatriate retiree community in the Philippines, there exists an unspoken agreement that, while rarely acknowledged, plays a direct role in perpetuating this crisis. The arrangement is straightforward. We avoid discussing the difficult cases in public. No one talks about the guy who had to pack up and leave last year because he ran out of money. We don't spread the word when a fellow expat dies in a way that casts a shadow over the lifestyle we have all committed to. Instead, we post our best days on social media and keep the unfortunate outcomes to ourselves. This is a completely natural human reaction. These communities are made up of people who have made major life changes and have a deep psychological and social interest in believing they made the right call. No one posts about the Geralds. Confronting those stories is too uncomfortable because they raise troubling questions about the future that newcomers simply aren't ready to face. Consequently, the expat forums and Facebook groups that serve as the main source of information for those planning this move are inherently biased toward the positive. This isn't a matter of intentional dishonesty, it is simply the result of selective sharing, which happens in any social circle when discussing failure is socially costly. Most of the creators behind the YouTube content are in their first 3 years of experience. Those who've reached the 6 or 9-year mark, those who've witnessed the entire journey, often either can't produce videos anymore or have tied their personal brand so closely to the paradise story that breaking away publicly seems unthinkable. Shirley Tanaka, who spoke with me under strict conditions about how her efforts would be portrayed, framed the knowledge gap this way: newcomers learn from those still riding the high or those determined to stay in it. No one is consistently sharing the stories of the men she assists. No one is tracking the welfare cases. No one is making the video about where the men from those beach photos are now, 5 years later. Over 6 years of managing her grassroots support system, she's guided 43 men through different crises in Dumaguete and the broader Negros Oriental region. 43 men in a single city over 6 years, hardly an insignificant number. This is a recurring trend. Out of the 43 individuals, 11 returned to their home nations, some with help from family, others through charitable aid, and a few by liquidating what little they had left. Another 14 remain in the Philippines, in circumstances Shirley calls stable yet fragile, getting by but without any financial cushion to handle unexpected expenses. 8 passed away from causes she believes were worsened by the hardships of life there. The last 10, however, have found a steadier footing, often after a major health scare or a relationship turning point that forced them to rethink their choices. She doesn't share these figures publicly. She's only telling me because I pressed for details and because she feels someone ought to know. Yet what sticks with me is this: the men in Shirley's group aren't the ones the system is designed to reach. The system targets those who haven't yet become part of her 43, the ones still in Tucson, Coventry, or Melbourne, scrolling through videos about affordable living, tropical climates, and the promise of a fresh start that finally feels worth pursuing. What most people overlook, and what's glaringly absent from mainstream discussions, is the real process that turns a financially secure 63-year-old retiree into someone who passes away at 69 with just $800 left in the bank. This transformation isn't random, it follows a clear, predictable pattern that can be studied, understood, and, most importantly, prevented. The key lies in breaking down the numbers with unflinching clarity. Take a retiree starting with, for example, $100,000 in savings. His fixed monthly income, whether from a pension, Social Security, or other sources, adds up to $2,000. He's been assured that $1,000 to $1,500 a month is enough to live comfortably in places like the Philippines. On paper, his income covers his expenses, and his savings seem like a reliable safety net. But here's the reality: after 3 years of following the usual path, the actual monthly costs tell a different story. Rent alone, a realistic estimate for a modest apartment in a smaller city might fall between $300 and $500, figures often cited in retirement discussions and generally reliable. However, the first major gap between advertised costs and reality emerges with food and beverages. A man who enjoys a drink most evenings, not excessively but enough to stay socially engaged, can easily spend $200 to $400 a month on alcohol alone. If he's particularly generous, a common trait among men in their earlier to middle years, as it strengthens social standing, the expenses climb higher. As previously noted, maintaining a committed relationship with a local partner, including direct financial support and related family costs, typically ranges from $300 to $800 per month for those settled long-term. This amount often grows over time as the relationship evolves and both the family's expectations and the man's sense of responsibility expand. Healthcare expenses also factor in, though they vary depending on individual needs. This is often overlooked during the initial planning phase, as a relatively healthy 63-year-old man rarely anticipates the medical expenses that come with declining health by age 67. Global health coverage, if maintained, represents a significant recurring cost, generally ranging from $150 to $250 a month for someone in this age bracket. Without it, he is essentially self-insuring against a risk that escalates annually. Additionally, miscellaneous expenses, such as local transport, mobile service, internet, occasional travel within the Philippines, and various unclassified social activities, easily add another $100 to $200 to the monthly tally. By the third year, a realistic estimate of total monthly expenditures sits between $1,400 and $2,000 under optimistic conditions. For an individual with a $2,000 monthly income, this means their entire budget is consumed, leaving no room for savings and potentially forcing them to dip slightly into reserves. For someone living on a modest pension of $1,500 a month, a common scenario for early retirees, they will be draining their savings by about $500 monthly. At this rate, a $100,000 nest egg would be completely depleted in 16 to 17 years. While that timeline might initially seem manageable, it quickly falls apart when you factor in the inevitable spike in healthcare costs around years 8 through 12, escalating relationship-related expenses, and the substantial inflation seen in the Philippines over recent years. When calculated honestly, the financial runway is almost always shorter than it appears at first glance, often drastically so. And this is the trajectory for someone who remains generally sensible. For a man who is more free-spending, drinks heavily, or makes rash financial choices under the influence of alcohol, the timeline is compressed even further. Consider Gerald Whitmore, who arrived with £93,000 and died just 5 years later with a mere $800 to his name. The math is straightforward. He was spending roughly $18,000 a year beyond his actual income. A monthly withdrawal of $1,500 from savings is realistic over 5 years for someone embracing the lifestyle being promoted. This covers rent, financial help for family, drinking, frequent social outings, and rising healthcare expenses, all without needing reckless spending, just a lack of honest budgeting. What I'd like to address is loneliness, because the way it's framed in this scenario often makes the issue harder to solve. The common story goes that men move to the Philippines to escape isolation. Initially, the country seems to provide exactly that: friendliness, effortless social connections, and a feeling of being valued. For a while, it does ease loneliness. But the problem runs deeper. The unspoken challenge is the deeper isolation that emerges over time, a loneliness distinct from what these men initially carried. This later stage expat solitude in the Philippines carries a recognizable pattern, often described in similar terms by those who've witnessed it. It's the isolation of someone constantly surrounded, a partner, fellow expats, a welcoming local community. Yet despite all this, he remains fundamentally unseen. His partner understands parts of him, but not the whole. Cultural divides, language barriers, and unspoken financial realities create an invisible boundary. The expat circle offers camaraderie, but it's the kind built on shared routines rather than real connection. Back home, his family only knows the curated version of his life, the one framed in social media posts. Subscribe now. Next month, I'm flying one lucky subscriber out here to show them the truth firsthand. No one grasps the full picture: the man who once had a career, a marriage, a life with purpose, now questioning at 67 whether any of it can ever be reclaimed. No one in his present surroundings shares the history or connection to truly grasp that reality. The isolation of being unseen despite being surrounded, your presence acknowledged but never understood, is more elusive and harder to address than the solitude of physical aloneness. It often surfaces in drinking, the most accessible numbing agent in that world. Tanaka put it in terms I still find striking. The men I assist in moments of crisis aren't lonely in the way they were back home. Their loneliness is something deeper, something they lacked the language for because they believed they'd left that emptiness behind. They arrived seeking escape from obscurity, only to discover that visibility here doesn't equal recognition. By the time they realize this, they've stayed too long to return to the familiarity they once knew. In Thailand, the Samaritans run a hotline that fields countless calls from struggling Western expats. While no comparable service exists in the Philippines, social workers and therapists working with foreign retirees there observe the same trends. Men reaching out to support lines or seeking mental health care often describe depression rooted in the disconnect between the life they projected to others and the reality they face. While it's important to examine the struggles some encounter, such as those who relocate to the Philippines and later find themselves in difficult situations, it's equally valuable to study those who adapt well over time. Identifying what sets these men apart can be just as insightful as analyzing the patterns of those who struggle. Those who thrive tend to approach their move with careful planning rather than wishful thinking. They assess their finances realistically before and after arrival, accounting for expenses like family support, social obligations, and insurance, rather than relying on idealized projections. They don't view financial contributions to family as an unforeseen burden but as a predictable part of their budget, having researched the expectations in advance. Another key factor is how they structure their social lives. The expat scene in many Philippine cities revolves heavily around bars, and stepping away from that environment demands effort. Successful individuals often seek out alternative communities, whether through morning markets, running clubs, diving groups, language classes, or volunteer work. These networks require more initiative to find than the readily available bar culture but offer more stable, long-term connections. Finally, they prioritize authentic relationships back home. Those who remain stable years later are the ones who maintain honest communication with family, rather than letting social media portrayals replace real conversations. The men who invite their children for visits early on and discuss their plans openly tend to have stronger support systems than those who only share a polished version of their lives. They prioritize their healthcare planning right from the start. By securing comprehensive international health coverage tailored to their age and medical history before any pre-existing issues could rule them out, they made a crucial move. Choosing to act proactively, rather than waiting for a medical crisis to force their hand, completely alters the risk dynamics of the whole transition. Furthermore, they possessed a clear, honest understanding of their true motivations. Though this trait is highly abstract, it is arguably the most critical factor. Expats who successfully establish fulfilling, long-term lives in the Philippines are typically drawn by tangible, positive desires, such as an affordable lifestyle, a tropical climate, and a supportive community. They are moving towards something real, rather than simply running away from their past. Conversely, those who relocate primarily to escape isolation, insignificance, or a broken life back home often discover that the Philippines offers only a brief respite. This temporary escape masks their core issues without resolving them, which ultimately exacerbates their struggles over time. This insight is not meant to judge anyone, rather, it reflects a well-documented pattern observed by researchers and long-term community members alike. There is a stark disconnect between the idealized retirement content found online and the actual realities of the local expat community, a clear informational gap that can be corrected. Glossy lifestyle media will always thrive because it is highly profitable and widely consumed. However, the expats who are floundering do not post vlogs, impoverished individuals do not show up in search algorithms, and foreign embassies avoid releasing statistics that might cause diplomatic friction, resulting in a collective bias toward positive presentation. The outcome is that those most at risk of severe consequences are making life-altering choices with only partial information. What should shift? Retirement guidance must present the complete financial reality, not just an idealized budget, but one that accounts for family obligations, realistic spending on alcohol, insurance, and unexpected healthcare costs. Expat communities require safe spaces for genuine discussion, free from the pressures of bar culture or social media posturing. These environments would help everyone. Those thriving would gain from transparent financial planning, while those struggling would realize they're not alone in their challenges. Government agencies in key origin countries, the UK, US, and Australia, must take a more straightforward approach in highlighting the specific welfare risks tied to retiring overseas. The data already exists within their systems, it's simply not reaching the people who need it most. And for the individual weighing this decision, the person sitting in a chilly apartment in November, watching a sun-soaked beach video and hovering over the "confirm" button, if you truly want to go, then go. The Philippines truly lives up to its best portrayals, its stunning landscapes are breathtaking, its people are famously welcoming, and its financial benefits, when handled responsibly, are tangible. But approach it with clear eyes. Prepare a budget that accounts for the often overlooked realities of daily life. Secure comprehensive health coverage before pre-existing conditions become an issue. Build a plan that keeps you connected to those who know you deeply, beyond just the polished highlights. Be honest with yourself about your motivations and whether relocating can genuinely fulfill them. And before making the move, seek out someone who's lived there for 8 years, not just a few, and ask what they wish they'd understood from the start. The true significance of that response outweighs any online content, even this discussion. Gerald, Whitmore's oldest daughter, originally from Leeds, allowed Shirley Tanaka to reveal a particular moment from her father's life, insisting it should be documented. During their final exchange before his calls went unreturned, he expressed regret. Not for leaving, nor for the path he'd taken or the decisions he'd made early on. His remorse was for the deception he'd kept from her, for letting the polished, social media narrative become the only story she knew. By the time he was prepared to tell the truth, he'd spent so many years crafting that false version that he no longer knew how to break it. She confided in Shirley, "I would have been there. If he'd only asked, I would have come. I'd been hoping he'd bring it up. This isn't about making anyone feel remorse or sorrow. I'm sharing it because it pinpoints the core issue in this whole discussion. What drives men toward Gerald's fate isn't mainly money or physical strain. It's the information divide, the space between what's revealed and what's real. It's the polished online narrative becoming the only one outsiders see, while the unfiltered truth grows too burdensome to bear alone, until the man holding it collapses under the weight. The Philippines isn't the culprit here. It's a remarkable place, offering real opportunities for those who build a life there. The culture, the cuisine, the stunning landscapes, the genuine kindness of its people, none of it is just a show for visitors. The reality of this situation is undeniable, and addressing it is deeply important. The forces affecting these men stem from a mix of partial facts, the unique financial pressures of living abroad, a social scene that normalizes heavy drinking, and the mental strain of projecting a successful image that clashes increasingly with their actual lives until the gap becomes unbridgeable. However, these circumstances can be altered. We can provide better information and foster more transparent discussions. Vulnerable men should understand the actual challenges before relocating, not to deter them, but to ensure they are fully equipped to handle them. If you know someone contemplating this transition, or someone already caught in a situation that has grown far more difficult than initially expected, the most powerful support you can offer is a sincere, non-judgmental conversation. Avoid saying, "I told you so." Simply ask, "How are you really doing?" Sometimes, when this inquiry comes from a place of genuine care, it opens up the necessary room for honesty before the situation spirals out of control. Gerald's daughter was simply waiting for him to ask. If you're aware of someone facing these circumstances, now may not be the time to hold back. Share your perspective in the comments. This is a discussion we should be having more frequently as a community. I'm paying attention to what you say.